Thanks for joining us on the NRT Now podcast, part of the largest Christian music site online, newreleasetoday.com. Sit back and relax as we chat with your favorite artists, introduce you to new artists, and more. Now here's your host, Jake.
We're here with Stephen McWhirter and Jason Clayborn. And Stephen, you are a returning guest. Well, actually, not quite returning guest. You co-hosted an episode. It's been 2 years already, man. We've known each other for 2 years already. I'm sorry that you've had to put up with me in that time. My bad.
I'm just mad I haven't been able to borrow money yet. That's how we haven't gotten that friendship. I can borrow some money.
So you co-hosted with us on the Hillsong episode a couple years ago. And
yeah,
we have a new guest with us. We got Jason Clayborn, who you just did an awesome collab album with that released as we're recording this about a week ago. Or is it just a few days at this point?
Well, at this point, if we're going to be honest, it was literally Friday. So it would have been the 8th, and here we are on the 11th? You know, whenever this podcast lands, you just got to let time deal with itself, bro. You know?
It's fresh. Let's just say it's fresh out.
That's right.
Fresh out. Yeah.
So, Jason, we want to introduce our listeners to you a little bit. Stephen will refresh everybody on, getting dizzy. So Stephen has a new iPad here that follows him. So through this whole episode, if we're distracted here, it's because Stephen is shifting around in his chair, circling, testing out this new.
I'm trying to get the glare out of my glasses, bro. It's driving me insane. It's just going to be there. It's a sparkle in my eye. You know what I mean?
We distracted from Jason here. Oh, my gosh. We better move on before this goes too far.
My spirit animal is a squirrel.
So, Jason, let's introduce you a little bit. Can you tell us just a little bit about your story?
Well, I've been in gospel music pretty much all my life. My grandmother and my mother kept me around it with choirs and songwriting and conventions and choir directors and songwriters. And I found out I had a niche to songwrite. So I wrote some songs and wrote a whole bunch of songs, pulled my brothers and sisters together. They sang, man, and I taught them those songs, and people really they really liked them. So, man, I was like, well, maybe I got something here, man. And then, so I just became my own artist and always did original material. So I started out with my brothers and sisters as my group, and my wife now and her sisters started a group called The Ensemble. We wrote a lot of songs together, and man, we would do concerts and they would be packed out, not knowing years later that I would be, writing for a lot of different artists, which has been really, really cool and really fun. I think the biggest thing for me is watching your songs, the songs that God gives you, bless people all around the world. And then we did this show called The Sound. It was kind of like this, I don't know, weird version of American Gospel, Christian American Idol. Maybe
it was, by the way, it was very like local cable kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We were judges on this thing, and that's how we met. This was years back.
Years back, and we met, and me and him, we just clicked. And then I just liked his blatant honesty about people, man. And he just really kept it 100, man. And I was like, man, I like this guy. And so, we were in our different worlds moving. He was moving as a worship leader and an artist. And then one day, man, he was on a walk during the pandemic, and God was like, hey, I want you to do a choir album. He was like, man, I don't know how to do that because I'm a white guy. And man, so he called me and he was like, hey, what you got? Yeah, I think so. You like cranberry.
No, I'm white. It's okay.
You're right. That's our relationship, yo. And so he called me, man. We linked up. We did this choir sessions album, man, and it went crazy, man. And when me and Steve got together, just the organic presence of God that was created with us when we were writing, man. We would write a song and be like, wait a minute, did we just write that in 30 minutes? Or did we just write that in an hour? We would write songs, and they were just piling up, man. And we knew that there was something there with me and him. And so that's where this Highest Praise album came up next. We thought we were going to work on another choir sessions album. And I said to Steve one day, I said, I don't think this is a choir album. I said, man, I think this is just a me and you thing. And man, it turned out and it was incredible. And it's something fresh. I feel like everybody sounds the same or is trying to emulate somebody else, man. Well, we need to emulate the kingdom and Jesus, man. And that's what this sound from this album, Highest Praise, came about. So that's a little bit about me.
And let me brag a little bit on Jason. So Jason Jason Clayborn and the Atmosphere Changers, they're signed to Ty Scott Records, and they released a record this year called God Made It Beautiful that is amazing. And they opened up for the Stellar Awards, which is like a really big deal in the gospel industry. That's like it's like the Grammys for the gospel community. So Jason is the real deal. Like, this guy rolls with super talented people, and getting to do stuff with him is an absolute privilege.
Let's peel a little bit down into that range. I love what you say about it being fresh, Jason, because I mean, I think it's one of the common criticisms about CCM right now is it's all kind of the same. Everything's kind of being built towards radio, because radio has a very specific formula. And that's not saying that's every artist, and that's not saying that there's no validity and that music isn't good. You know, and I definitely don't want to say that at all, but
yeah, not at all.
But, you know, it's kind of getting back to the roots of music being the expression and just all these different sounds, because there's so many different voices in our country, in our world. And that's one of the things that I think we've lost sight of a little bit in the last year and a half, is that there's just so many voices that together sound great and really tell a different story.
I think us as the kingdom, we are a little slow on that. When you look at hip hop, you look at R&B, I mean, you got different genres that are melting and meshing. I think that, you know, we have to not be afraid of tapping into a sound that reaches a whole nother set of people. And I think we're all rushing to look to the same people in the church, the same people here, the same people in this building, the same people in this building. And God is like, no, I'm trying to expand my kingdom. There needs to be something created that reaches somebody totally different than the normal sound. And I think that's, a matter of fact, I don't just think, I know that that's what God did through us.
When Jason and I came together to do this record and projects in general, the thing was, you know, you got the racial aspect of things, right? And one of the big things is, this is going to sound terrible, but I'm going to say it because that's the way I shoot.
Oh, no.
But what you
straight from the hip.
Get ready to bleep all this out. No, I'm just playing. Listen, you've got a white evangelical church. I can say this, okay? You got a white worship church, and they see a racial issue. And this is, by the way, this is not consciously done. This is more just like, if you step back, you see it, right? So nobody's maliciously doing anything. But what you have is, there's a racial issue. So let's get a black guy to come over and sing white worship music. And there we go. We've resolved the gap. But really, you can't remove music from a culture, because music is such a big part of a culture. And in the gospel culture, man, is awesome. These people are real musicians. It's incredible. I don't want that watered down. I want to, when we came together, we were like, all right, let's truly honor each other. And what's it look like when you don't try to change Jason and you don't try to change Stephen? What you end up with is something that sounds genuinely fresh. And I remember talking to somebody recently that said, you know, what the gospel side does well, it celebrates. And on the worship side, we'll say, oh man, that was a really great service because everybody cried. The only person that celebrated was Kleenex. And I was saying, no, it's true. And that's good. I mean, but here's the deal. Both need each other. And that's what I believe it is. I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but if you get to heaven, you're going to find out really quick that it's every tribe, every nation coming together, worshiping the Lord. And I think we're going to be surprised what that sounds like.
That's it. Is what does it sound like? Do we know? Are we holding ourselves back from the, not just creative process, but the sound from heaven? Are we holding ourselves back from really releasing that sound here on earth?
Mm-hmm.
We sing a lot of songs about heaven come down and bringing heaven down to earth and, you know, and all this kind of stuff.
And those are good, by the way.
Yes.
We're not down talking those. We love those.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, where I'm going with that is like, right now, I think we have a culture that's saying we all have to think alike. We all have to, come to my position. I'm right. And not just politically, even in the church, different denominations, all the stuff. We just have this whole thing that I'm right. And so come over to my side. But I love what you're saying about just the sound of heaven, just the different voices that come together. Like,
I'll say this, you're right. There is a challenge in us finding a way to come together instead of saying, and even in genres, people are like, well, you have to pick a genre. I'm like, but if you pick one genre, you're immediately saying, this is all I do. You've picked a camp instead of allowed real creativity in the church. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It does. I just don't think we're learning how to make a place for real creativity, true artistic expression through the bride. We should be doing that way better and more intentionally than the world, which in the secular market, something totally fresh and different is welcomed for the most part, or has a place to land. In the Christian market, we're learning how to make way for that, which is a good thing.
I kind of want to lead into refreshing your story, Stephen, but if you break everything down to one formula and one path and one everything, then there's a whole breadth of people that you can't reach. And if you write songs that are all just happy honky dory, like worship is, everything's great, life is great, then there's a whole segment that's hurting. There's a whole group of people that are hurting that can't relate, that can't identify, that can't follow that path along. And, so I really love just this conversation around different voices and all that, and just kind of leading into, can you refresh us on what your story is and the pain that kind of led you to start, well, back in the day, Iron Bell Music, now the path that you're on?
Well, that aside, I think the thing about it is my testimony is obviously, I grew up in the church, but didn't want anything to do with it. Became a drug addict throughout my teens. By the time I was, 17 on into my early 20s, I was a crystal meth addict, crazy rebellious against Christianity, hated it. Somebody gave me a book about Jesus, and I ended up reading it at 3:00 in the morning and having this radical encounter with the Holy Spirit in this room. And the book was Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, but I'm not trying to it's not about a book. That's a great book, but it's about the Lord just used that, right? And in that room, I just had this radical encounter with the Holy Spirit, literally quit everything overnight, gave my life to Jesus, went from addiction to redemption, meth addict to worship leader. And, fast forward some years later, I become part of this thing with Iron Bell Music and really kind of walked into the Christian music industry as a songwriter. Still a songwriter with, Essential Worship and stuff to this day with the publishing company. But all of it has been holding on to that moment where I gave my life to Jesus, right? That this thing is real. This is real. Oh my gosh. Right? Jason and I are not trying to sell a product. We are trying to adore that God, that very real God. And there's a song on this record called God Be Yourself that's we've kind of did as a single for the release of the record. The reason God Be Yourself is the whole idea. It's God, just your character and your nature is enough. Who you are. I don't have to beg and plead with you to be who you already said you are. You're that God I met at 3:00 in the morning that took me from meth addict to worship leader. That is who you are. I never have to beg you to be who you are. And we have a girl, her name's Rainey, who we were told when we were writing the song, a friend of ours, Kurt Vernon, who wrote the song with us, came in. He was late for the songwriting. He said, sorry, I was late for the songwriting. I was praying for this girl. Her name's Rainey, and she's got stage 4 colon cancer. And I was praying over her, and I didn't know what to pray. I just said, God Be Yourself. And I was like, that's a song. So we wrote the song, and I just, as we talk about it, it's that meet you wherever you are. I don't care what. And it's not even about just the song. It's about the reality of who God is. No matter where you are in this thing, we all have one thing we have to keep in common, and it's that God's real. It's real. It's all real. And his character and his nature is who he is. It's not like he is a healer. He can't deny himself. He is good. He's the very source. He can't deny himself. All these things, right? So even with this whole record, the biggest part of it for us is really expressing that. God's character is what we want. We want to know him better, and we want to adore him, like just exalt him and have fun. Because guess what? He's also fun. He's actually named his character nature is fun. That blows my mind, but it's true, right?
So I got to ask, I always get confused by this. In modern day, you keep saying record, I keep saying album. Which is it these days? Like, I know this is a complete squirrel moment. I'm following in the Stephen McWhirter theme here, but I just don't know whether to call them records or albums anymore.
He's finding something.
That's a record. So I guess you're right. An album is a collection of songs, so whatever. I think I'm going to make a record, though, of the album, so let's do that. Let's say that.
Total squirrel moment. I think we can carry on.
I think also, too, with this album, it's an everyday life album. Like, for instance, he was talking about God be yourself. We don't just want him to be himself in the services that we go to. The church services, the concerts. We want him to be himself on a regular basis. And I think that sometimes we get so caught up in those. They're great. I love going to church. But it's the life after, the things that people are dealing with on a regular basis. There's songs, Let There Be Love. We got songs on here that the yes song, they are yes, yes, and amen, declaring all the promises over your life on a regular basis, the encouragement that, you don't get when you're not with the big body of people. And so I think that that's what this album, Highest Praise, has on it as well. It's everyday life worship and relational things that help build your relationship with God on a regular basis.
And here's the thing about it for believers, people listening that are creatives. One of the things we do is we don't just go, okay, we've created this album, this is it. If you're a true creative person in the body of Christ, it's not a one project deal. It's who you are. You just create, right? You don't put all your eggs in one basket, and you don't just go, okay, I got to create for this genre, I got to create for this thing. You go where the Spirit leads. And if you start worrying about will this fit? Will this go on the radio? Will this do this and that? You're already creating from a place that's broken, because the best place is, we always tell people, create out of the overflow. What that means is you spend so much time with the Lord when nobody's watching, that who they meet and see is that person. Like, you're created in the secret place. In those moments, you're not going, okay, let's practice for Sunday morning, or, hey, let's make a great sermon, or you're just you and the Lord. That's it. And so then when you get on a stage, people are experiencing who you are when no one's watching, right? And it's the overflow of somebody. And so when we create all the time. Like, we already have a Christmas EP coming out in November, because all we do is record. So it's like crazy.
Too early.
October's too early. Dude, there are people that have been recording records for Christmas in January.
I know, it's so wrong. It's so unhealthy, but
that's the fun part about it. I'm telling you, we've been on the right, and we write something, and or Steve will say, well, I got this idea. And then I'll say, well, I got this idea. And it's like, okay, let's roll with it and see what happens. Not being afraid of the process of who we are individually. When you see us on stage, people are looking like, how did this tall white guy and this black dude, this big beard, how did they get together? What in the world? And that's what the kingdom, it's what it looks like. I mean, it looks like what we portray on stage, and we have a blast doing it. I think it's incredible. It's fun. And like I said, I love worship. Everything doesn't have to be slow. It's good to have some fast stuff and some fun stuff to minister.
Good problem to have when we're writing the record. Go, okay, we gotta get a slow song on here.
Right.
That's usually the complete opposite. It's like, oh my gosh. But the creative process can be so fun. Him and I we're talking about starting to go live once a week, songwriting together, so that people can actually see what it looks like for two totally different music cultures to come together and create together and to kind of get an inside perspective about what it looks like. Just be transparent, just be out there creating, letting people in on the process.
Yeah.
Which is incredible because even as I sit and try and write songs, like I can get the melody, I can, whatever on the instrument, but I can't write a song to save my life.
Are you ready? Here we go. We're going to do it right now. My name is Jake, and I am great.
And that's probably about the quality that it would be. The 10-second songs. That's just something that I've come to really appreciate over the last, year and a half, as we've seen so much division. We've seen so much junk in and out of the church. Just, it's everywhere. Just division is being sown everywhere. I think the enemy is just on the move terribly in that way. And I just love seeing, this picture. I mean, to me, it's not like how the crap did this big white guy and this, sorry, it's a tall white guy. My bad. I'm right there with you, bro. I am right there with you.
Me eat tiny worship leader.
Oh,
go
wow.
ahead. No.
Where did this episode go wrong? Let me mark this flag right here.
No, but how did we come together, right? And people see that. We live in Louisville, Kentucky, where the Breonna Taylor thing went down and all that. There was a lot of, it was an epicenter for the racial conversation, right? We started doing this right before all that really started getting crazy. I don't know if you remember that, Jason. We were in the studio recording Glory Hallelujah before things really went completely sideways.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, okay, Lord, wow, that's crazy. How did you know that was coming? Because you just did, right? And that's
right.
the whole beauty of like really just following the voice of the Lord. And don't say stuff like, oh, that'll never happen. I'll never do that with this person or this or that. Don't do that, because the Lord can do some pretty amazing stuff if he wants to.
Where I want to go is like, I just love seeing this kind of thing, because in my mind, it's not like, hey, how did these two different people come together and how did they start doing this? Especially from, it's a black guy and a white guy. How did this happen? But it's just celebrating two people from two different cultures, just being able to come together, in one voice. And I mean, I think we kind of keep that common theme of, that's what heaven's going to look like when we get there. I mean, because there's going to be people from the Middle East in heaven. There's going to be people from China, it's not just a black and white thing, being a little over dramatic about that, but it's just seeing two people come together with two completely different backgrounds, take all that, the rest of that out, but just the power that comes from you guys just coming together, two different things coming together with one voice is just incredible.
And the separation between the two cultures, I think, is wider than people realize. If you talk to someone in, I saw JC on.
No, that was my niece.
Oh, that was
my niece. Yeah.
My kids are running around too. We're lucky. We're lucky we haven't sent some child in underwear run in front of the screen already.
Right. Right.
Real life, the separation's wider than people realize. I've talked to a lot of people in, the CCM market and the worship market, and I'll say, you guys, who Hezekiah Walker is, because Jason's done some stuff, and Hezekiah Walker is well known in the gospel community, and people will be like, who? And in the worship CCM side, but then on the gospel side, I'll say, hey, have you ever heard of For King and Country or something like that? No clue what I'm talking about. That's how wide the separation is, because for us, we know exactly who that is, right? That to me is like a little glimpse. We think we know what's going on, but when you start talking about the music culture, which is you cannot remove from the cultures, that's when you start to see, oh, wow, we need to start learning to play together a little bit, start learning to build together a little bit.
Well, I want to wind this episode down just a little bit. Jason, I've got to know what exactly happened in the studio that we can embarrass Stephen with. I mean, I know that there's a whole bunch of things.
I haven't already embarrassed myself.
Oh, my God.
I posted all those videos.
Oh, yeah. Those are, just go to his page. You'll see him. He doesn't mind posting about me and, everything. I mean, well, it's just fun. Stephen just talking about different cultures. My choir members, they grew up in the hood. Some of their grandmothers raised them, and some of their aunts raised them. And I mean, it just different backgrounds. And they built a relationship with this man. and they love this man genuinely. And it took time because of conversation. So when they met Steve, and Steve was just like, I mean, he's just blunt about everything. They was like, where did you meet this dude at? And I was like, yo, y'all gonna love him. He's crazy. I mean, he just says whatever's on his head, what's on his heart. And they have grown to love this man. And you have to realize that it starts with conversation. I think that where we've messed up in our two different worlds is we haven't really sat down and had conversation and been blatantly honest about, okay, this is what happened. This is how I got to where I'm at. This is the reason where we are where we are. Not just conversation, but listening. And then us finding a solution and then moving on from there so that we can really see what the kingdom looks like here on earth. And that is what's happened between us, man. It's been incredible.
Jason's the opposite. He's completely approachable. When you see Jason, you're like, this is the coolest guy I've ever met. There's no like, where did you meet this guy? It's why is he hanging around you? So anyway, but when we were doing the Chosen Christmas special last year and we were on the set, people would sit down and like talk a little bit about surfacey things. And it took like 2 seconds for me and this guy to get right to real conversations. And people are like, wow, you guys actually just talk about this stuff. And it's because when you actually love each other, it's not an argument and it's not a debate. Not that we argue or debate. I'm just saying, like, it's just, we just talk about it. And we're just not good at doing that because we're always trying to win arguments instead of just love each other and like hear and understand.
Well, I very much appreciate you guys taking the time out to hang out with us here. And Stephen, I want to see just how far this iPad will actually follow you. I'm sure by the time this is over, we are maybe the rest of your afternoon is just going to be.
I'm going back this way. Look how cool that is. You only got nothing like.
I want one.
See, it didn't even look down. I was laughing. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of annoying, but I can't get it to stop. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think we got to end it there, guys, before it gets too far down the hole. Like,
okay.
Praise. Go buy that record right now. Go download it. Do your thing.
Get it.
That's how you end this podcast.
Right. Don't get it right now. No, I'll shoot the platform.
Thanks for hanging out with us for this episode of the NRT Now podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And special thanks to Neon Feather for providing our theme music. Make sure to check out newreleasetoday.com and our socials for more great content. See you next episode.